taught you to hate the color of your skin? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other.
That one day,
before you come asking
this nation will rise up,
you should ask yourself,
live out
who
the
taught
true
you
meaning of its
to hate
creed.
being what God gave you?
Most of us blacks, or Negroes as he called us, really thought we were free without being aware that in our subconscious, all those chains we thought had been struck off were still there. And there were many ways where what really motivated us was our desire to be loved by the white man. Malcolm meant to lance that sense of inferiority. He knew it would be painful. He knew that people could kill you because of it, but he dared to take that risk.
He was saying something over and above that of any other leader of that day, while the other leaders were begging for entry into the house of their oppressor. He was telling you to build your own house.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. It's really warms my heart to have my guest here today. It's my hero. That was one of my heroes right there, Malcolm X. And we're going to talk a little bit about those days and those times. I'm talking to one of the few producers that I know that can really relate to this, as well as or someone that can teach me something about those days. Welcome to the show, the producer, Gil Noble. Pleasure to have you here.
Good to be here.
Pleasure. It's been 5 years since you were here last.
Yep. Where does the time go?
We exchanged some ideas last couple with James Davis.
That's right.
A piece. I got a lot of response from that too. People say, "Oh, I saw you on Gil Noble." You know, you're the reason why I'm here doing what I'm doing now. I know I've told you that several times, but it's the truth. It really is. I mean, you've been in the forefront to show we as blacks how our history, you know, and the first time we really worked close, well, I mean, I worked anywhere near you was at John Clark's memorial, Dr. John Henry Clark's memorial. And that was such an eye-opener for me, personally, because I think I was wandering around, not knowing my history. I studied a lot of ancient Egyptian history and Osiris, or Osar, and Isis, and the Dogons, and the beginnings of creation from the serious mystery and so forth. And I always felt like I'd been there in a past life. Or, you know, I felt that there was a consciousness there that that I had been there before.
Right.
But you've been around, what, on television 30 years now? More than that? More than 30.
More than 30.
Right? Now, you've been a producer all this time, right? You've been in front of the camera all these many years.
Yeah.
And the few years I've been on 5 or 6 myself, on live television. I enjoy live television. I can feel the vibration. I know people are there. And it's so different than taping.
Yes.
It's a completely different experience. You know, you can actually reach out and you can feel the people there, you know? And I often want to hear someone else's take on what it's like to be a producer. How did you get started?
Well, the way in which I got started was out of struggle, really.
Mm-hmm.
I'm born and raised in Harlem, and I was going, I started my career actually in radio,
Mm-hmm.
at radio station WLIB,
Right.
when they were located in Harlem
Mm-hmm.
on what they then called Lenox Avenue and 126th Street.
Okay.
And of course it would be renamed Malcolm X Boulevard.
Right.
That's where I really learned the rudiments of broadcasting
Mm-hmm.
and writing and editing and things of that nature. The mechanics was one compartment of my education. The other compartment of my education, this is in the mid-'60s now, this is around 65, The other component of my education was the politics of the day.
That's the year Malcolm died.
Yeah, he was
65.
assassinated
February?
February 21st.
Right.
And I had not yet started. I started in the
Okay.
summer of '65.
Okay.
But there was so much going on in Harlem at the time, so much energy.
Yeah.
And being at 126th Street, the Abyssinia Baptist Church was, you know, a short walk.
Right.
And there was Adam Clayton Powell doing his
Right.
thing, and then there was Louis Michau's bookstore on 126th
Right.
Street, and what was then 7th Avenue, and the Muslims had the mosque on 116th Street, and the
Right.
Panthers had theirs on.
That's right. Oh.
So there was so much energy and so much information. So I was growing in two ways. I learned the mechanics of journalism and production and things of that nature, and how to write, copy, and things. But the most important thing, I think, was my political education, because mind you,
Okay.
I came out of a public school education and high school and college where I learned nothing at all about myself.
Right. Right.
That much.
Right.
And I really got a sort of a concentrated dosage of history in a couple of years that just my eyes just started out of my head, because I was learning things about myself that I really didn't know.
Right.
Because of the civil rights movement, pressure was put on television to begin to have more melanin
Okay.
in their studio. And so Bill McCreary, who was my boss at WLIB, he was the news director. He went down to Channel 5 and started doing the 10 o'clock news. And I went down to Channel 7 and started doing what is now called Eyewitness News. And I did that for a little over a year. I did street reporting, and I anchored the weekend news and things of that nature. And I was used to the microphone and reading copy. I was a little unsteady about working in front of a camera. But in 1968, Dr. King was struck down. And a mantle of guilt fell over this country. And its impact on broadcasting was amazing. And so they decided that not only was it right to have one or two black people on camera, but there had to be some programming. There was the Kerner Commission report, and the FCC was not what it is today. And they both said that America was a two divided parts of society, and whites did not know what we were undergoing from our lips. They got it from people who looked like they did, and that was wrong.
Okay.
And if there was going to be a healing, then they had to be exposed to more of a perspective from the black community. And so out of that, the programming began to change. And every local station came up with one black program. And Channel 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13 all came up with a black program. And Like It Is was born. And because I was already there, I was put on another hat and began to do co-hosting with the first host of the program, who was Robert Hooks, the actor.
Oh,
But I was still running between hosting the program and doing street reporting and doing the
Right,
weekend
okay.
news and all of that stuff. But after a while, Robert Hooks left to do this program called NYPD. And he recommended that I
right.
succeed him
Okay.
as the host. And I did, and very, very unsure of myself. And then it wasn't long after that that I became the producer, which comes right down in digest form to what we're talking about. And then I began to put together all that I had experienced. And I must say that there are different kinds of producers, but I think the bottom line for black men and women in this business is that you be well versed in our story.
Right. Right.
And we're not getting that kind of opportunity in the education that we're being exposed to. Higher education really doesn't lay it on the way
Right.
it should. And so many people are getting into the business today and have gotten into the business who really did not have the advantage of being in the chapter of history that you and I were in, where we were able to meet these individuals and hear them and touch them. So I think that today's journalism really has that deficiency. I'm not criticizing my colleagues. I think they're doing, you know, a good job, but I think they'd be even more effective to us and to society if they could have more opportunity to cover the black community stories on both sides of the Atlantic, and in particular be more conversant with history, because I believe that production and journalism really hinges on context.
Right.
What you talk about today has to be put in context.
Right.
I couldn't do with anything on you, a report on you, unless I knew something about you.
Of course.
And if it was just that you were accused of doing something and you were in the news today, and it wouldn't be right. It wouldn't be fair to you. I'd have to put you and who you are in context. And that is missing in today's journalism. So I would say that the bedrock of effective producing, no matter what dimension of production you're in, would really be what your background is, how much you know, how much you've been exposed to, how much you've read, and all of that. Now, as far as the mechanics of production, there are different kinds of producers. There are people who produce studio talk programs.
Right.
There are producers who go out on the field producers. There are all kinds of people who produce game shows, people who produce sitcoms. They're all producers, but they wear different, you know, garments. But I think the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned, whatever it is, that if you have a good background, then you can do even an entertainment program in a way that it does not denigrate our people. And I think everybody comes out the better for it.
Well, I have an ambition to have our own television station. And I could think it would honor me if you would be the head of it and teach people television production. Teach them how to focus on an idea, or how to be constructive about presenting our history to the world. Because our history has been so diluted or hidden and lied about. We've been bamboozled and
You're right.
just served. It's hard when you think about going to public school, like you said, and you're taught that the Greeks were the beginning of civilization, or 300 A.D. And what happened prior to that?
Exactly.
Where was Egypt in 10,000 B.C.? They were building pyramids, and the European was in a cave.
And I think the more that you know about history, not only does it benefit the work that you do on camera and professionally, but it just adds to your dimension as an adult, as a black man or a black woman. It straightens your spine and squares your shoulders.
That's right.
It makes you carry yourself in a different way. The more you know about yourself, the better. And then, of course, it'll affect the caliber work you do.
What about Malcolm in the beginning, when he talked about who taught you how to, that's interesting, because in the 60s, I mean, even more so in the 50s. I mean, when I remember being in high school in the 50s, and I was up north, so well, the most profound exposure to racism to me was Emmett Till, 1955. I was 14 years old too, so I couldn't fathom why they would do something like that to a kid. And I was in an integrated society. I went to George Washington High School. It was 50-50. It was a Jewish neighborhood in those days. And I lived on 147th in Amsterdam, and you go over to Broadway and Riverside, and all that was white in those days. The policemen were all Irish, and the gangsters in Harlem were, But I didn't feel that much of lack of self-esteem as much as I always thought it was funny why they would sit in the sun and try to get our complexion. I was always amused by white racism. But when this Emmett Till came up, it really floored me how they could do that to anybody. So they were like, something's wrong with these people. Because I knew whites that weren't anything like that. But come to find out, it was all more subdued in the North than it was down, the blatant racism that you found in the South. I mean, is there any situation where you found or were exposed to life and realizing what sort of problems that you incur being black here in America?
Well, there were no Jim Crow signs in Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow it was made clear to us that Harlem is where you belonged. And when you came downtown in the area where these studios were, it was tiptoe time.
Right.
Get what you came to get and get back home.
Mm-hmm.
You were not welcome down here. Hotels, stores were pretty much, limited. And you felt the chill.
Mm.
And so in my upbringing, and in school, I was really taught to accommodate the situation.
Okay.
There were no Jim Clarks riding through Harlem,
Right.
with police dogs. There was brutality,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't as blatant, as you said, as it was down south. But up south, nonetheless, it was clear the economy was controlled by those who didn't look like us.
Right.
And we really had no leverage. And even our heroes, they lived in Harlem. When Joe Louis came to defend his title at the Yankee Stadium or the Polo Grounds, he had to stay in Harlem. He couldn't stay in a downtown hotel. So we were thrilled to see Joe Louis, not really thinking, of the dynamics and the details of racism. And we were taught to accommodate it. It's the way things were and the way things are, and you just have to sort of gingerly skitter around it. So you learned your place and how to maneuver by inference. Now, one of the things that really shook me up about Malcolm, he dropped his last name. Now, part of our socialization was to take great pride in our last name.
Right.
Now, he talked about that in this opening sequence. Well, I couldn't swallow that. It was a tough thing for me to swallow.
Right.
Why would you drop your last name?
Right.
We used to revel in, the European ring to our name. If it wasn't European enough, we'd put a QUE on it, or you know what I'm talking about.
Right. I was so Winston Gilchrist.
Oh yeah, look at my name. So,
all right.
At least the one I go by.
Right.
And so I couldn't swallow that. I had a lot of trouble with that. And then he talked about white people in a way that we were socialized not to. You didn't dare talk like that. And here was this man, we were thinking some of the things he was saying, but not to say it.
Right.
And he was talking about, evil,
right.
the evils of racism, and he talked about white people's looks.
Pale skin, yeah.
Yeah, and he was accused of being
Pale thing.
Yeah, he was he was accused of being a reverse racist. But I came to understand that what he was trying to do was balance the equation, because we had been given a stilted sense of self, and we thought that the lighter you were, the better. The straighter your hair, the better. The more aquiline your features, the better. And so he tilted it the other way and said, brother and sister, your hair and your skin is beautiful.
That's right.
And they are the ones who are deficient. They're the ones who are ugly, and we're the ones. And so it was a hard thing to digest. And before I knew it, Malcolm was gone. And then I really understood how valuable he was. And I made up my mind that I was going to really devote a lot of my work to telling his story. Because in a way of trying to atone for the sins of my ignorance. I lived in Harlem.
Right.
And I was scared of Malcolm. And I'm not, I have to just admit that.
Right.
And if I heard that if there was a rally in Harlem down the block, I was going in the other direction. I didn't want to hear that crazy man.
Okay.
And I knew a white fellow who was going to Princeton. And he called me up one weekend, and he said, I'm coming to Harlem because I want to hear this man Malcolm. He just spoke on my campus, never heard anything like that. And I said to him, you're going to come with your whiteness to go and hear this man talk about you? I said, no, that's crazy. He said, no, I'm coming. Because he beat up all of the heads of the department down there in history, theology. He beat them all up.
Right.
And I just have to hear him again. So
brilliant.
he came to Harlem, and he was going to the Rockland Palace, where the nation was having their rally.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, let's go. I said, what do you mean, let's? And I refused to go. And we had a big argument. I said, no, you go ahead, and, you know, that man he's crazy, you know? And so he went, and he came back paler than when he left, you know?
Because he heard some truths.
Yeah, he said that he was put in a segregated section where there were no chairs. He had to stand for 2 hours while Malcolm poured intellectual boiling oil over him and his history, and talking about what happened in this country. I said, well, I told you not to go down there. I told you, you know. And I was arrogant in my ignorance. And it wasn't long after that that he was assassinated. And a Muslim brother, who I didn't know was a Muslim, who lived in the projects where I was living at the time, and he said, I got something I want you to hear. And he had a recording of Malcolm, and he gave it to me. And I sat up all night just playing it over and over. I realized, you know, what had been done to me. I had been just robbed of access to this wonderful, extraordinary man. And so I carried that with me, and I still do. You know, it's you may not see it, but it's right across my chest where my heart is, and it's right across my forehead where my mind is. And I'm just trying to atone for not being there to tell his story. And I wish I could have met him. I never touched him, never laid eyes on him. And that's to my shame.
That's amazing.
So Malcolm really, and you know, you look at the global situation today, Winston, and he was analyzing.
He was right.
35 years ago.
Right.
His analysis was meticulously on point. I mean,
That's scary,
he's
isn't it?
just the most extraordinary man. And he only lived 11 years, I always say.
Right.
Because he was released from prison at 28.
Right.
And between 28 and 39 years of age, he grew to one of the most overpowering intellects that we've ever seen in this country.
Well, he affects everybody in this opening piece that I give now.
Yeah.
The youngsters that listen say, wow, you open up with Malcolm? I said, yes. Because I'm so conservative to them. And because I wear a suit.
Don't rub it.
No, I mean, you're welcome under any conditions. But they look at me as, you know, very, very conservative. And I was radical back then. I mean, I was...
Malcolm was meticulous in his dress.
Yes, he was.
Suit, bow tie, he was always well-groomed. He had it together.
Right.
I would commend to the attention of viewers that they get a hold of his last message, which was delivered a few days before he would be assassinated in Detroit. It was after his house had been bombed. And he's introduced, and you hear him coughing and everything, and he apologizes. He says, I'm awfully sorry, but, you know, there's smoke in my lungs and all of that, and please forgive the way I look, because I had to grab, you know, what was the first thing I could get my hands on after this firebombing.
Okay.
And as he began to talk, which ran about 2 hours, he laid out an analysis of what's going on in Africa and what was going to happen in Africa, what was going on in the Middle East, what was going on among the Western power structure, to quote him, and it is right on point today. So I would say that that's a testament to his brilliance. can't say enough about this man. And this is not at the expense of Dr. King, because I saw Dr. King, and I heard him speak at the Convent Avenue Baptist Church.
My church, yeah.
And he knocked my socks off.
Everybody talks about that.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody talk like that before in person.
Yeah.
Because I went to an Episcopal church. I'd never been in a Baptist church, but I was passing the Convent Avenue Baptist Church, and up on the legend, it said Martin Luther King Jr. at 7:30, and I looked at my wristwatch, and it was 7:35. So I went on
You're
in there.
supposed to have been there. See that? God guided you
I
right
didn't know he was coming in, and I went in
guided you
there,
right
and he was
providence.
just unbelievable.
Fantastic.
So I think that a beneficiary of all of those extraordinary thinkers and doers of the time, and I just try to do what I can to infuse that in the work that I do.
Well, watching you over the years, you've done a grand job of exposing a lot of history to us. I might take a quick break and give you a little taste of what we did at John Henry Clark's memorial. Would you play that? Do you have that song that? Take a few minutes and just want to relate to that 6 hours, 8 hours. That was a long day.
Yes, it was.
July 21st.
Yes, it was.
1998.
Yeah.
98.
Yeah.
That was quite a day. That was the first time I got the pleasure of sitting and working next to you. I had an old big VHS camera in those days.
That's Abyssinia.
Amy Peterson, the singer's name, Amy Peterson something. Forgotten the last name.
Beautiful.
Amy Peterson. Matter of fact, I ran into her outside of my building the following day.
Oh, really?
She told me she sang in the shower. She wasn't professional. She wound up being the daughter of one of the secretaries, Dr. Clark's secretary, I think.
Oh, I see.
And she was called in from the Midwest somewhere just to sing that song. But that was quite a day. We spent, now see, that was an eye-opener for me, Dr. Clark. You know, like I said in the beginning, I knew something about black history, but I was, you know, I felt the same way about Dr. Clark as you did Malcolm. I said, how did I miss not meeting this man? How did I miss not sitting at his feet?
You hadn't met him?
I never met Dr. Clark.
Oh.
Okay? That's what like you felt about Malcolm, I said, oh, what did I miss here?
Yeah.
I said, I've been robbed.
Yeah.
I've been, you know, I've really been bamboozled.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get the pleasure to sit at his feet and listen to him. And listen to you, Jeffries, Dr. Jeffries, Dr. Ben. And I got closer to Dr. Ben after Dr. Clark died.
Yeah.
And I mean, since, that's 5 years ago, since those last 5 years, I've grown 1,000 years in our history and understanding what it's all about, being black here in America. Really just studying Dr. Clark's life. I mean, he came out of, what was it, Georgia? No, before that was Alabama.
Yeah.
And then he went to Georgia.
Yeah.
And then he came to New York in 32, I think, 33,
Yes.
and sat at the feet of
Schoenberg.
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 At 18 years old.
Yep.
Self-taught. Taught himself how to read and write.
Yeah.
And today we sit back and look at a genius. Amazing what he finally got how many degrees after 20 years, I think it took him to get his master's or something.
Yeah.
And then a doctorate.
Yeah.
But to be self-taught and leave us such a legacy. I mean, I was just so, you know, that point, that's when I start really blowing up as far as our history is concerned.
I think history, again, is the backbone. I mean, I believe that what you know, what you learn in school, is really a weapon.
Okay.
And they teach you how to fire the weapon in school, but they don't teach you who to fire it at.
Okay.
And I've always said that if you really don't have a context or an historic background, you are dangerous because you have this loaded weapon and you don't use it appropriately.
Okay.
And there are many people who use the mechanics of their education inappropriately, and they use it against our people or against themselves. You know, so I think that the education that you're armed with is all important. John Henrik Clark and Dr. Ben and Ivan Van Sertima, they appeared on Like It Is, and they did a series for about 3 hours consecutive, and it just got an overwhelmingly large audience response. And you know, a lot of the mail for transcripts, the requests for transcripts came from prison.
Prison, yeah.
And I still get requests, and they ask for the program by show number and date.
Wow.
And this was over 30 years ago, because it was at the beginning of my career, that they were on.
Wow.
So it shows you how thirsty we remain about knowing about self. We really don't know a lot about ourselves. And I think that's the role that we have to bear the responsibility for as producers. We have to see to it that the truth is told. And I'm just privileged to have known Professor Clark.
Yes.
He was truly a great man. He lost his vision towards the end of his life, but he could see far more clearly than all of us.
Right.
He had a clear understanding of Africa and our presence here in this country. And he really just filled me up with self-pride and a focus. I'll always be grateful to him. He's a very unassuming man.
Yes.
He had a brownstone house in Harlem. And
Convent? Convent house?
No, between 7th and 8th Avenue.
Oh, 138th Street.
Yeah.
37.
And in the basement, he had thousands of books. He had to build special shelves to accommodate all of these books he had down there. And spent a lot of time down there with him. And every one of those books was frayed. All the pages were frayed. So he could sit down and talk to you and make references to books, not just by title, but by page and by chapter. I mean, he could break it right down, and he'd be right on the money.
Everybody talks about him like that.
Yeah, he was an extraordinary, extraordinary man. And that's why I say that he never carried a gun or a blade.
Didn't need to.
But he was armed, and he was dangerous.
Wow. You know, that's one reason why I think we should have something of our own uptown, so we can take his archives and your archives, Dr. Ben's archives, Professor Small, Dr. Jeffries, all these gallant historians that there's no place where we can see their works.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no place on the planet where you can really see your history. And we owe it to ourselves before we move on. I mean,
yes, I'm very, very concerned about that.
Okay.
I think we owe it to those who influenced us. And believe you me, you and I wouldn't be sitting here talking if it were not for the pressure that those warriors we're talking about put on this country.
What about today?
What about today?
What about today? You see less black programming out there today of any consequence other than sitcoms. I mean, we're still, you know, Stephen Fetcher, and that's all I see on television, except for your show.
Well, I think we reduced the demand. There was a clear demand in the 50s and 60s. Okay. We were, as they say in Harlem and elsewhere, we were jacking up America.
Okay.
Because they had mistreated us and misinformed us. And so we were putting pressure in many areas of this country. One of them was media. Another in schools. Black history programs began to be born. Black history departments began to spring up in colleges. All because of this pressure. Students put a tremendous amount of pressure up at CCNY. The students were out there in the street demanding to have a part in open admissions and also to change the curriculum. Now, I think the demand, I don't think I know, the demand for that kind of remedy has been reduced. And I think, unfortunately, too many people in too many walks of life who are burnt of skin, as Dr. Ben would say, have stopped making a demand. They're well salaried, well employed, well housed, well driven, and you don't hear a peep out of them. And I think that's unfortunate. I think we really have to remember where we came from and how we got where we are. And it wasn't a bootstrap story. In other words, you can't tell a youngster, I got my job because I majored in this and I went to, no, that's not how it happened. The way we got our jobs is because some people fought and bled and died for it. So we owe that to Mrs. Hamer, and we owe that to Malcolm, and we owe that to
Martin.
So many, to tell the story. Just tell the truth, that's all. But that's not profitable today. It's more profitable to do lighter stuff and more entertaining, quote unquote, kinds of programming. The rewards are not great to pursue the more profound issues of our experience. And I think it's a lot of black people really do not put enough pressure on media to do so.
Well, I'm constantly stopped in the street and told, we want to see more of Philip Valentine. We want to see more of Professor Smalls. We want to see more of Graham Weatherspoon, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. I had Dr. Jeffrey.
Leonard Jeffries.
I always want to see Jeffries. You know, people who are hard-hitting and tell us the truth about our history.
That's right.
I mean, but from commercial television, you're the only one out there doing yours, and yet you're at 12 o'clock on a Sunday when most of us are in church. I mean, why isn't your time slot, 9 o'clock Sunday night? I'm sure, you get quite a following.
Well, I think that the bottom line in this society is money.
Okay.
And profit.
Okay.
And if it doesn't make money, it doesn't have much relevance in the eyes of many of the people who control media.
Well, how can we
They are
help you?
driven by...
How can we help you?
Oh, that's another story. I think the best way you can help me is to be a stand-up man and woman.
Okay.
And to fight for that which is right.
Okay.
Which is how I got started, as I said.
All right.
I'm not looking for anybody to support my particular program or my particular situation. I think if we just stand up for our people,
Okay.
I think that we'll get better justice. It is a shame, I believe, that we don't have enough serious programming. The condition of black people is grave. On both sides of the Atlantic, as we know.
Especially young. Look at the young.
We're not covering the story. We're not doing it adequately. We're not pressing the envelope. I think those in the business need to raise Cain about it, and I think that the community needs to raise more Cain to see that this story is told about what is happening. Otherwise, I think that we're going to not only stay where we are, but slip and go back. In fact, it's starting already because we're losing jobs,
Yes.
and Black History Month ain't what it used to be 10, 15, 20 years ago. Black History programs are, fading out. You don't see them. All the corporations used to have Black History programs in February.
They're gone.
It's faded out.
Since
And
the
a lot
80s.
of colleges have stopped, Black History Month exercises. It's serious.
Well, I want to bring all
wake
that
up.
stuff back.
What's that?
I want to bring all that stuff back, that black
doing it.
consciousness. But I want it on a grand scale. I think we need our own station.
Mama may have and Papa may have, but God bless the child.
Amen. With his own,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
Well, that's the whole thing. I think that's the only way we can get our story out, if we own it and we tell our story.
Yes, and I think that we have the economic muscle to do it
Well, let's do it.
because we have the wherewithal to keep many major products in existence. Many major corporations would not be in business were it not for us as consumers. And now many American corporations are shutting down their plants here in this country.
Oh,
and they're
yeah.
opening them overseas, guess where?
Yes.
In Africa, in places of color, all right, where they get cheap labor.
Of course.
So I think that if we were to reclaim our leverage and our muscle, and I think that it would be a different story. There's no reason why Africa should be in the shape that it's in.
Right.
But we have to fight to get it better. Africa is wealthy. How is it that a country as wealthy as Africa can have so many poor people?
Well, we know it's
And
been raided,
The Western powers are just feeding off the wealth
of course.
of the riches of Africa, and we're not the beneficiaries of it. And even in our communities here in this country, I don't know of any black communities in this country where the economy is controlled by us. I can't.
We got to start with Holland. Our homeland. I think we have to start right in Holland.
Well, I believe that.
Okay.
I believe that. And if we controlled our own businesses and our own economy, that would give us more leverage in schools, would give us more leverage with police and the political
Yes.
system, and also with media, because we'd have our own corporations and we'd be able to sponsor our own programming
Okay.
and get the kind of relevant programming. But I think that you got to have another God than a dollar.
Yes.
You got to put that aside. I think money has its place, but not at the expense of being a traitor to your past.
You know what I've learned over the last, I knew it before, but I learned it's come to me more so in the last 5 years, understanding our spirituality, understanding how we're really the true children of God. And that if you're black in America and you don't know God, you're in trouble. You're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And Reverend or Minister Conrad Tillard or Conrad Mohammed Tillard made a comment to Malik Shabazz that you have to love your enemy. And Malik Shabazz, flared up and said, love my brother, not my enemy. But I think we as black people are spiritually strong enough to reach down to the decadent person who has a lack. Now this covers all people. That people that are not spiritual have to be, you have to love that unspiritual person, to lift him up, to raise the consciousness of this planet. Because I don't think we can get anywhere until we, as a human race or human beings totally, raise our spirituality. And black people are so strong and survive all this onslaught and all this pain, all these hundreds of years. But we're strong enough to really lift up the entire planet spiritually and show them the God that lies within them. To be able to love your enemy, that's a heavy thing to do. But anytime I ever get really angry, I really get angry. I get so mad sometimes. Somebody asks me, you never seem like you ever get mad, Winston. Well, I have an anger in me so bad that I want to blow up the planet. I get so angry, I just want everything to disappear, the planet to disappear. And I don't think you can even get that angry. But I pray to God, send me a message of what I should be doing. He always comes back and says, Winston, you're going to have to love everybody. I said, well, how can you do that?
I think that you can love someone and still be forceful in correcting them.
All right.
Even if it has to turn into a spanking.
Okay.
Of whatever degree it may happen to be. As a matter of fact, I would say that if you say that you love humankind,
okay,
just like if you love somebody and you see them going wrong, and you say nothing to point out the error of their ways, I question your love. So if you are a child of God,
amen,
and a servant of humanity, then you are obligated to communicate to that person when you see them doing wrong. I don't think that's an act of hatred. I think it's just an act of, and as Malcolm said, many times you have to speak the language that the transgressor speaks. And sometimes the gentle language really does not reach the person. You have to sort of raise your voice until you get their attention. And sometimes even if they don't really respond to language, then you have to use other means of communication. If you're walking down the street with somebody in your family and somebody starts to harass them, you say, man, why don't you chill out, and stop that. And if they continue, you raise your voice and say, now look, and if they continue, you have to use more persuasive means of getting across to them that they need to leave your family member alone. So I think that it's not wrong, and even Christ himself picked up the cane and went upside some people's head who were involved in wrong. I don't think that diminished his love of humankind. And I think that the love ethic has to include a variety of weapons and tactics. That's my particular, and it doesn't diminish the degree of your love. Just like when you're a kid. You don't question your parents' love for you, but they make it very clear sometimes with the strap. They're non-negotiable about you, about your behavior, and they will resort to any means necessary to see that you behave.
Those days, parents just looked at you.
Yes.
My father just looked at me, and I knew I was doing something
That's
wrong.
right. I think I was about 9 or 10 before I knew the word why. If I was told to do something, I had to do it. I didn't know why.
We accept that sort of corporal punishment, they call it today. But how do you implant that sort of discipline in the children of today?
Well, it's becoming increasingly difficult, I think, because we have come out of an experience here in this country that has destroyed the very nucleus that can provide discipline. Our family structure has been torn apart.
Genocide by design.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that you can enslave a people if you keep families together. So when we were brought here, we were dispersed. And that that really immobilized us, with a few exceptions like Nat Turner. And then as time went on, we began to form segregated communities, after slavery, and we began to rise up in the civil rights movement. But I think that, again, the narcotic of success has sort of, chilled us out. And we don't have that kind of forceful power in our home structure. Now, I'm speaking in broad terms because there are, of course, good families among us, but it's very difficult for black men to be men in this country. It's very difficult for black women to be black women in this country. Yes, because of the value system that has been beaten into our heads, we are more hostile towards each other than those who are creating our, it's a very, very difficult, very, very difficult thing to undo. It's going to take a long time. The creation of the situation took centuries, and it's going to take a while for us to undo it. But we better get started.
I say to most of the young people I come in contact with, matter of fact, one of the young persons that are here, I said, let's ignore the white man. Let's pay attention to what we do to one another.
But I thought you was talking to me about love.
Well, you got to love your brother.
Oh, I see.
Your real brother.
But you said forget about the white man?
Well, I mean for the minute.
Okay.
Because you're too busy hating him. That's what I'm saying. People who have so much hate for the white man.
Right.
All right, I'm saying we, as adults, realize how far we've come, and we, being mature spiritually, can reach down to the level that they're at spiritually and uplift them. But those children, can I say, or young adults that haven't been through the trauma that we went through, and haven't experienced all the the ups and downs that you do when you get to past 50.
Well, I think we also need to pick up our own communities. And,
right, exactly.
Other communities are a secondary priority.
Okay.
But I would like to see our people, become stronger and whole, and have greater control over our young people and of our schools and all of those things in our economy. I think that that's a priority. And then, when we reach that plateau, I think that we can deal and interact with other ethnic groups. Okay. But you can't really get the attention and the respect of other ethnic groups if you don't have
till you know yourself
your own power base,
right,
and which demands their respect.
Oh. This has been powerful. It's an education being this close to you, Mr. Noble. I mean, I really respect what you say and what you've done in the past, and hopefully I can follow.
Why don't you stop, man?
Well, you have no idea how you affect me. I mean, I took a look at the last show I did. I don't think I've been that nervous on any other show.
Really?
I could tell myself, but you couldn't tell with the camera. But I remember that first show, and then it didn't come out perfectly, and I was so disappointed with it. But I had to clean it up a little bit. But that was one of my earlier shows. But today I just do them with such ease.
You're doing a fine job, and it's good to see you out on stories and out there documenting.
I try to be everywhere.
Yeah.
But I need a team. I need you to head a team of journalists. Yeah. I'll go back to this training center that we need in Harlem. And I'm going to talk to everybody that we know that are very interested in doing the same thing, putting archives in a position that we can see them all. I mean, we as a people.
Let's talk.
It has to be done.
Let's talk.
It has to be. Now, you come on every Sunday at 12 o'clock.
12 o'clock.
Channel
7.
ABC, and you're on from 12 to 1.
That's correct.
Most people are in church, but I always have to put a tape in for this. I'm sorry I can't see it live. I understand last week you had on...
Dr. Joy Leary.
Yeah, I missed that. I'm going to have to get a tape of that.
She's talking about post-traumatic slave syndrome.
That's interesting.
And how the impact of the terror that we were subjected to for centuries has really crippled us emotionally and psychologically. And is at the root of many of the things that we're doing to ourselves today.
We should have started off with that.
Yeah.
Right?
She's a very, very very profound woman. And part 2 will be on
next
this
Sunday.
coming Sunday.
Right.
Yeah.
Sunday, what is it, September? Somebody, quick,
You
quick,
got
quick.
me on that. But
This Sunday coming, so you're live, so you can't miss it. The 14th.
14th.
Of September, Channel 7 at 12 o'clock. The Sir Gil Noble, Like It Is. And it's been a pleasure to have my hero here today.
Thank you.
Producing.
Thanks for having me.
All right. How much time we got? Oh, we got, let's see, when you're live.
We have a little more time?
When you're live. Anything you'd like to say to the
I would say that another important component in my life is music.
Ah, okay.
And music has taken me closer to
That's
God.
Right, you play piano.
Yeah. And it has exposed a world of beauty that has impacted on me.
Okay.
And the way in which I behave. I've met some of the most beautiful people in my life.
In December 1964, Malcolm debated at the Oxford Union in England.
I read once, passingly, about a man named Shakespeare. I only read about him passingly, but I remember one thing he wrote that kind of moved me. He put it in the mouth of Hamlet, I think it was, who said, "To be or not to be." He was in doubt about something. Whether it was nobler in the mind of man to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, moderation, or to take up arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing, end them. And I go for that. If you take up arms, you'll end it. But if you sit around and wait for the one who's in power to make up his mind that he should end it, you'll be waiting a long time. And in my opinion, the young generation of whites, blacks, browns, whatever else there is, you're living at a time of extremism, a time of revolution, a time when there's got to be a change. People in power have misused it, and now there has to be a change, and a better world has to be built, and the only way it's going to be built is with extreme methods. And I, for one, will join in with anyone, don't care what color you are, as long as you want to change this miserable condition that exists on this earth. Thank you.
Malcolm was